In this video, we're going to be talking about positive and negative integers. And when I say integers, all I mean by that are whole numbers. So in the last video, we talked about decimals and fractions, but this one, we're only talking about whole numbers. Those whole numbers just might be positive or they might be negative. But just like the last video, you're going to need the same materials. You're going to need your math journal, a calculator, pencil, eraser, and ruler. So if you don't have those things, make sure you pause the video, go get them, and then come right back. So in the last video, we used number lines. Number line that went from 0 to 3. But now we need to include both positive and negative numbers on this number line. So to do that, I'm going to move 0 here. We're going to have negative 3 down here. So any number below 0 is going to be negative. And any number above 0 is positive. So any of the normal numbers we're used to working with are positive numbers. But numbers are also negative. So remember, numbers communicate things about our world. That's all they are. They're symbols that communicate things. So if the number is positive or negative, it's communicating something about our world. We're going to talk about that in a few examples. But for now, I just need you to be visualizing this number line with our positive numbers counting upwards and our negative numbers counting down. Alright, let's start with a discussion about some positive and negative numbers. So we're already familiar with some forms of negative numbers, especially when it comes to weather. In the wintertime, it might be sunny, partly cloudy, with a high of negative 10 degrees Celsius. That means on our temperature number line, 0 degrees Celsius is here. That would be a negative 10. If it drops even further, say negative 15, we go farther away from 0. If the temperature rises a bit, but it's still pretty cold, it might be negative 7, which brings us a little bit closer to 0, but still negative, still below 0. If it's a positive number, it's going to be way up here, positive 17. So if it's temperature, you can kind of visualize that thermometer on a number line. Another real-life example of positive and negative numbers can be seen in finances or when we're dealing with money. Let's start off with a simple example. Let's say if you're here, you have no money, $0. As you make money, you travel up the positive side here with more and more money. Let's say you make enough money to be sitting at $100. If you gain, say, $50, you'd go up to $150. If you lose $50, you're going down to positive 50. Well, what if you lose $150? Let's try that. So let's say we have our calculator, and we have $100, and we want to take away $150. Let's say we spent some money on a credit card. We spent more than what we actually have. If I put that into my calculator, I end up with negative 50. So I would have $50 below 0. So on my number line, that's all the way down here. So numbers below 0 do exist. In this case, this negative sign is communicating that I actually owe $50. So even if I make $100 back, I'd still only be sitting at $50 because I'm $50 in the negative right now. You can try that on your calculator. You take negative 50. Even if I add 100, I don't get that full 100. I'm only at 50 because I had to overcome all of this negative money first before I could start to see some positive money. actually money I could keep. So it's really useful to kind of practice with a number line and keep it in your mind when you're working with positive and negative numbers. So let's keep talking about money, but in a little bit of a different way. So we're still going to have a number line, but I'm actually going to flip it so that instead of being horizontal, it's going to flip to be vertical. Let me show you what I mean. So we still have our 0 in the middle. We still have our positive numbers on one side and our negative numbers on the other. So it's important to recognize that the negative numbers are always going to be at the bottom, below 0, and our positive numbers are at the top or above 0. Now let's say this number line is going to be representing our savings account. We're going to start off with $0 here. Now if we put money into the savings account, let's say we put in $5, we would climb up this number line to 5. Now maybe we add in another $10. We would go up 10 to be at $15. So we can add up our positive numbers here. We added 5, then we added 10, which gives us a total of 15. Pretty simple. But what if then I need to subtract some amount of money from my savings account to spend on something? Let's say I had $15, but I actually need to now take away, say, $6 for something. That means my money now moves back down towards 0, 6 points. So 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. So then I'd be sitting at $9, not 15. So I still have money in my savings account. I'm in the positives here, but we can actually go into the negatives. Negative numbers when we're talking about money often means we're in debt. So I'm going to label this debt, which means I've spent more than I actually have. So you might go into debt to buy a house, you might borrow money from a bank, or borrow money for school, for student loans. Whenever you're spending money you don't actually have, we go into the negatives. So let's see what that looks like here. Let's say I needed to spend $10, but I only have 9. That means I'm going to go from 9 all the way down to 0, and then one more into the negative. So I'm actually sitting at negative $1. I am now $1 in debt. $1 more than I actually have. So that's what that negative sign is telling me. If I gain more money, I could go back into the positives, or if I borrow more money, I would go further into the negatives. So like I've said, numbers are communicating something about real life. But when we use a number line like this to tell this kind of story, it gets a little bit messy. So we use something called a Cartesian plane, which is actually 2 number lines to sort this kind of stuff out. Let me show you. The Cartesian plane is actually 2 number lines. One is horizontal, the other is vertical, and they cross over each other like this. So this is something I would like you to write in your math journal. Please use a ruler and do it with 2 straight lines. And this is something you're going to use to communicate things with numbers for as long as you do math. So pretty much forever. We have our 0 mark right in the middle, just like we always have. And then if we think about this line, we know our positive numbers are on this end, and our negative numbers are down here. And just like with the vertical line we saw before, our positive numbers are up here, and our negative numbers are down here. So let's put some information on this Cartesian plane so we can see how it works. Let's get some data. Let's use temperature. Let's say on day 1, the temperature was positive 4 degrees Celsius. And then, let's say it dropped to 3 degrees and then negative 5 degrees and went right back up to 2 degrees Celsius. If that was our temperature data, we can put this actually on this Cartesian plane so we can see it. Now, I see that there's temperatures here and there's days. Now, no matter what the temperature is, the days are going to keep going up. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to put the days here on this branch of the Cartesian plane. And then I'm going to put temperature on our vertical one. And that's a discussion about independent and dependent variables that we'll get to when we do data literacy. But for now, I'm going to tell you days go here and temperature goes here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So our temperatures are positive and negative. Our days are only positive. So I'm actually going to leave out this whole branch of the Cartesian plane. That's fine. Now I see on day 1, it was 4 degrees Celsius. And then on day 2, drop down to 3. On day 3, whoa, really low. I'm going to go all the way down to negative 5. And then on day 4, bounced right up to positive 2. So you can see that I'm lining up the numbers here. As best I can without graph paper, but you've got graph paper in your math journal. So now when I connect those dots, day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4, you can see that this graph is starting to tell a story of how the temperature changed over those 4 days. The next activity you're going to do in your slides is going to just help you get used to this kind of 2 number line system called the Cartesian plane. So you're going to go back to the slides and see this problem solving assignment where you're going to be graphing financial information. So you're going to be given some information about someone who has been gaining and losing money over time. You're going to graph this information on a Cartesian plane. And then once you have your graph, you're going to make a screencast video just like I'm doing now, where you're going to talk about your graph and you're going to make a prediction for the future. So here's that financial information that's going to be in your slideshow. You see at the start, the money is going to go up or down each month, and you're going to graph these changes. From 0, it's going to go up 5, and then up 8 more, down 4, up 9, down 1, and then up 6. So you're going to have one of those spiky little graphs like I did with the temperature. You're going to take a photo of the graph you make in your math journal and put it on this slide. And then I ask you to make a second graph that's very similar, but instead of just the addition and subtraction of the dollars, you're actually going to have the money amount. So in your math journal, you're going to create a graph that shows the amount of money in their account from month to month. And then of course you're going to put a photo of your graph here. Now the last step is to use Screencast-O-Matic, like I am now, to create a video recording of you talking about your 2 graphs that you've placed on the slides. You're going to answer the following questions. What do you notice about your 2 graphs? How are they different? How are they similar? And then you're going to make a prediction about how much money will be in their account after 1 year or after 6 months of data that we don't have. I want you to explain your thinking. You're going to put that video on the last slide here. Now this is meant to be a challenge. It's meant to get you thinking. It's a problem-solving assignment. This is not just copying things out of a textbook. This is supposed to be challenging. But of course, you can ask me for help if you're stuck.